to OBI's Lunch and Learn, the FDA meeting strategy for success. I'm Adrienne Klein here with Oregon Bioscience Incubator. While we get settled, we do have some housekeeping items. Go ahead and stay muted, through the event. If you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. Or if you do have some questions, you can put those in the chat and we will address them throughout the whole program. I'm going to go ahead and put my LinkedIn in the chat so you can connect with me. Also with me today is Lisa with Oregon Bioscience Incubator. She's going to put her LinkedIn in the chat. Yes, she waved there. And so if you also would like to connect with anyone here, then feel free to put your LinkedIn in the chat and we can connect with each other. We do have land acknowledgement. OTRADI would like to acknowledge the land we are all on, wherever we may be. OTRADI conducts business throughout Portland and beyond. It is making an effort to acknowledge the history of the area and work towards decolonization of the bioscience industry. So to learn more about Portland's native, diverse, and vibrant community, please read Leading with Tradition, a document created by the Portland Indian Leaders Roundtable, and that link will also be in our chat. At the end of the Lunch and Learn today, a survey is just going to pop up and it's anonymous, and I would love for you to fill it out. It really helps us decide what programs we're going to continue doing and understand the kind of topics that will be of interest to you. So today, for the FDA meeting strategies for success, please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Gordon, a regulatory affairs expert with 34 years of pharmaceutical and FDA experience, specializing in drug and biologics development for rare diseases. Her leadership roles span multiple companies, focusing on therapies from antifungals to gene-targeted treatments. She spent 6 years at the Food and Drug Administration, helping shape biological products, regulation policy across the Center for Biologic Evaluation and Research and for the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. But first, we have a message from our virtual growth series sponsor with Jerry Bautista is here with us today, the Capital Access Acceleration Manager with Rain Catalyst, and he's going to share some information with us. All right, Jerry, take it away.
Thank you very much. Let me, I just have a couple quick slides to share, if you don't mind. Let's see, oops. Can you see that?
See anything? Not yet.
Not yet. Hold on, please. Yeah. There we go. Can you see that?
Excellent. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry for that fumble. So thanks for, we're happy to help sponsor the session today. And I just have a couple slides sort of introducing Rain Catalyst. And Rain is a nonprofit entity that's aimed at helping entrepreneurs grow businesses throughout the Northwest, but with a particular emphasis in rural areas, which tend to be underserved by the usual standard investment mechanisms. So it is composed primarily of a team of entrepreneurs who have both founded, grown, in several cases scaled and sold or had their businesses acquired. And it's all about building sort of a thriving entrepreneur culture with lots of hands-on help. So in this case, we have entrepreneurs and residents that are in throughout the Northwest and Washington, Oregon, and in rural areas as well as in the larger counties. And it's all about sort of activating a community-based approach where people are helping each other. And we are in the middle of a learning sessions that we've created, sort of an entrepreneur boot camp, if you will, that started in March and ends up in July with 9 sessions of learning everything from value proposition to pro forma statements to pitch decks to strategic pivots, how to get equity funding, et cetera, with also some legal help here and there. It's all around access, making sure that we have access to the funding partners, but more importantly, access to mentors that can help these particularly rural startups, advocating for them from a policy perspective, quite active in the political domain and working through a consortia of other nonprofits to try to drive kind of a more open and barrier-free growth perspective for businesses, and just really accelerating growth and scale of these things through bringing in new jobs, reducing failure rates, and fundamental training. So it really is kind of a full service, if you will, from helping people start their ideas, scale them, find funding, and then help them once they get going, just help them along the way with various help on how to maintain teams, how to grow them, and continue to thrive in a really challenging domain. And we don't have to talk about the politics these days, but there is plenty of challenges now to surmount. So this is not an easy time for entrepreneurship, especially if it's in kind of the more sort of areas that tend to be either DEI or women-owned businesses, for example. So anyway, this is Rain, and we're very happy to help sponsor this session. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. We love and support everything that Rain is doing. We do have a link to Rain's website in our chat, so please take a moment to check them out. They're doing some great work. Before I hand it over to Dr. Elizabeth Gordon, I want to say just a few things, that this is part 2 of a three-part series. If you missed the first one, there will be a link in the chat that will take you to the previous session so you can kind of get caught up. And additionally, we're going to put her LinkedIn in the chat. She would love to also connect with you guys, so feel free to do that. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Elizabeth Gordon.
Thank you very much. And welcome to everyone. I appreciate you spending your lunch hour with me. And a warm welcome to those of you who are joining for this second part. And hopefully I'll see all of you for part 3 in July. So let me start by sharing my screen. Can everyone see? Perfect. So as I spoke about in the first session, communicating with FDA is an important component of your overall drug development program and plan. And I can't help but emphasize the importance of having regulatory affairs support to assist with these connections and the strategy for having these meetings with FDA and being very involved in the project management of the development program, so that there's a clear understanding for the topics that wish to be discussed with FDA, when the data will be available to support the questions that you might have to the agency, and the timing to have these meetings. And I hope that this presentation will sort of clarify why all of those things are so important. So I think I briefly talked a little bit about this at the last session, but the types of communications that you have with FDA are written both from them and from the sponsor. They can be telephone calls, video conferences, and many of these meetings are cited in regulation in 21 CFR Part 312.47. And there are general meetings, end of phase 2 meetings, pre-NDA meetings or new drug application meetings, or pre-BLA meetings or biologics license application meetings. I'd like to refer everyone to a guidance document that will provide more detail to this slide presentation. And this guidance document continues to evolve based on what kinds of meetings and the direction that FDA is going with regard to meetings with sponsors in the regulated industry. So the purpose of these communications are to facilitate drug development, to resolve any issues that arise during development, to avoid any time-consuming delays or costly pitfalls. For example, you want to try to avoid a clinical hold after you've submitted an investigational new drug application. So hopefully there's a chance for you to discuss your development program and your first clinical studies so that you can avoid any negative delays. The meetings support and guide the manufacturer or sponsor, especially those individuals who are coming from academia and have had no previous FDA interactions. And more importantly, is these new technologies or products or assays that the FDA has not seen yet. And it's exciting to present and educate the regulators about what you're doing. And then finally, discussing policy issues, trying to best see how some of the policy guidance documents will impact what you are doing and the types of products that you're developing. And as I said, the timing of these meetings are critical so that you can plan effectively and efficiently in the context of the availability of data and the launch of clinical trials. So I'd like to talk about these meeting management goals. These goals, what FDA is going to give to regulated industry, and these were negotiated in the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. So if you recall, we talked about how companies who are filing new drug applications, there are user fees that are levied towards the applicant, and what that fee does is force the FDA to provide more timely responses to the regulated industry. So if they're paying for something, they want to get something back from the FDA. So those sort of timelines and when FDA is going to respond will be discussed, and those should be kept in mind when you are planning your development program. There are many different types of meetings that I'll discuss, how you schedule these meetings and how you request these meetings, how the meetings are conducted, and whether they are just written responses or video conferences or face-to-face meetings. And again, considering the timing of these meetings in your development timeline, whether it's availability of data, launch of a trial, launch of another expensive toxicology study, these considerations need to be kept in mind and discussed with your program management team, including your regulatory affairs advisor. So there are several types of Prescription Drug User Fee Act or PDUFA meetings, type A, B that are end of phase meetings, like end of phase 1 meetings, end of phase 2 meetings. There are type C meetings, and then some new meetings were added in PDUFA 7, and those are the type D meeting and the interact meetings. And I'll talk about each of these different types of meetings. So how can you have these meetings with FDA? You can have a face-to-face meeting where you'll go to Washington, D.C. or Maryland, and you'll have a face-to-face meeting. Keep in mind that these face-to-face meetings will also have a hybrid component, a video conference component, because it's been recognized that not everyone can participate when it is scheduled for a face-to-face meeting. So you almost always have a hybrid component. There can also be a full virtual face-to-face or a video conference, teleconferences, and the last one is the written responses only. FDA will try to push for written response only meetings so that they don't have to come together, which is more time consuming and at times difficult. But if you've requested and accepted another format of the meeting, you don't have to accept a written response. Or you may find that the written responses that FDA gives you are sufficient, and then you can just close the chapter on that. So type A meetings. Type A meetings are the ones that happen the most rapid because you are having issues so much so that your drug development program has been stalled, and it can't move forward without discussing the issues with the FDA. For example, this might be a clinical hold or an FDA response to a clinical hold that was submitted by a sponsor that maybe the FDA puts you on hold, you don't agree with it, you don't understand the reasons for the hold, you're not sure how to resolve the hold, and you can't progress the program. So you will, under those circumstances, request a type A meeting. Also, if there's a new safety issue that's come out in the clinical program and that has resulted in some restrictions or a protocol modification that's been requested, you can discuss that with FDA. Or a post-action meeting. So an action by the FDA is the issuance of a complete response letter after they have fully reviewed a new drug application or a biologics license application. And if you have to discuss some of the concerns that FDA has expressed in that meeting, in that communication, that complete response, you can request a type A meeting as long as it's within 3 months after receipt of that action letter. Type B meetings are the most common. They are the pre-IND meeting, the pre-NDA meeting or pre-BLA meeting, or meetings regarding your REMS or risk evaluation mitigation strategy, which some sponsors are required to submit in the context of a marketing application. There's also type B end of phase meetings. An end of phase 1 meeting is one that is held if you are on the track for an accelerated approval or using a surrogate endpoint to support your approval. I'll talk more about that in session 3. And of course, the traditional end of phase 2 meetings or pre-phase 3 meetings are considered end of phase meetings. Type C meetings are any meeting that's not an A, B end of phase, or a type D or an interact, which I'll talk about in a moment. So everything else that falls into the bucket of not one of those will be a type C. Type D meetings, these are fairly new. These just came out in 2023. They are extremely focused meetings on a very narrow set of issues. It's typically not more than 2 issues, and it's very restricted with regard to the number of disciplines that are included in the meeting. It's usually not more than 3 disciplines like CMC, chemistry, manufacturing, controls, non-clinical, or clinical. And you have to explain very carefully why you believe that this type D is so restricted that you need to have this type of meeting versus one of the other ones. And FDA may or may not agree with the categorization of the type D meeting request, and they may switch your meeting to a type C, which has some timing implications, which you will just see in a moment. And then finally, the interact meetings, which are the initial targeted engagement for regulatory advice on CBER or CDER products. And again, this is a new meeting that came in 2023, and it's intended again to focus on novel issues or questions or unique challenges, specifically perhaps for some of these new therapeutics that we are seeing now. And again, they tend to be ones that are earlier in development. So what kind of IND enabling non-clinical studies should I be doing for this new novel product? There are some very complex manufacturing issues or processes or testing that needs to be done, and I'm not quite sure how FDA will feel about it. The use of innovative devices used in combination with drugs or biologics, or any other sort of cutting edge testing methodologies. A lot of times we're not quite ready for a pre-IND meeting. We're not ready to launch a clinical protocol. And that's when we will engage the agency for an interact meeting. I haven't done one of these meetings yet. I know that my prior employer wanted to do them because they occur very quickly. So if anybody who's participating has had some experience, I'd love to hear at the end how you engage the agency and whether or not it was successful. I think I sort of went over this, the scope of the interact meetings. This again is new, and it is, you know, I don't want to say a challenge, but my thought is that these meetings may quickly get converted to other classifications of meetings, but we'll see. So the first thing that one does is requests a meeting, and the meeting request criteria are outlined very clearly in that guidance document that I listed on the second page of the presentation. And you have to tell the FDA a little bit about the product, the regulatory pathway, the type of meeting you are requesting, the format of the meeting, the proposed agenda, who is attending from the sponsor side, because if you're going to bring non-clinical people, toxicology experts, you can be sure that FDA is going to match you one-to-one with who you're bringing to make sure that they're not tripped up by anything. And of course, when you receive a list of attendees from the FDA a few days before the meeting, you're going to make sure that you've got your end covered if all of a sudden they're bringing a statistician and you hadn't thought to bring one. You have to suggest the dates and time for the meeting within these timelines that I'm going to talk to you about. And then the most important part of the request is your list of questions. These questions cannot be something like attached, the briefing package will describe our non-clinical program, and we are looking for FDA's agreement on that. Or we are looking for FDA's agreement on the manufacturing and testing of the product. FDA will deny your meeting and say, those are the kinds of things that we will tell you after we review your full investigational new drug application. So we'll let you know if it's adequate once that happens. So the way I typically write questions is I put together a company position, and it describes what the issue is, why it's an issue, what my concerns are, and what the plan is to address an issue. And then it's usually a question. The question is, do you agree, FDA, with my approach? And that will give them a lot of leeway to agree, not agree, point out things where there's deficiencies, but this company position can be a page to a page and a half, and I'm not shy about putting that in. I have been criticized that these company positions that I write are too lengthy for a meeting request. But I've had meetings denied before, and I sat on the other side as a reviewer at FDA. And if I don't have enough information to determine whether or not it's worth having a meeting and I can provide appropriate guidance, I'm going to deny the meeting. So I'm okay with the 10-page meeting request if that's necessary. But it needs to be very well written so that FDA understands how important this meeting is for you and how they can help you. So, you know, I've been on both sides, and I've also received a meeting request that's been denied. So this is one of the most important pieces of this process. So when do I when I send in my meeting request, which goes into your IND, or if you don't have an IND, it goes into a PIND or a pre-IND. So here are the response times from FDA to let you know whether or not your meeting has been accepted, the meeting request has been accepted, or if it has been denied. So for example, for a type B meeting, which is the most frequent, within 21 days of receipt, FDA will tell you whether or not your meeting has been granted and whether or not your meeting will be a face-to-face meeting as you requested, or if they say, you know what, your issues can be answered under a written response only, and they're just going to give it your responses in writing. And of course you can challenge that, but this is when you're going to expect a acceptance of your meeting, and you can calendar it with your team. When does FDA schedule these meetings? Now, this is all prescribed in regulation under the meeting management goals for the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. So because for type A, your meeting is, because your development program is stalled, it's going to happen very quickly. So 30 calendar days from the receipt of the request is when FDA has to schedule a meeting with you. They're pretty good about giving it to you at that period of time. It only sort of sways a few days if they just can't get the right individuals available to attend. Much harder to get meetings in August in a timely manner than other times in the year. Type B meetings or pre-IND meetings or pre-NDA, pre-BLA meetings are 60 calendar days from the request receipt. End of phase meetings are 70. Type C meetings, which are the bucket of all others, is 75 calendar days from meeting request receipt. Type D is 50 calendar days, and interact meetings are 75 calendar days. So why is this important? And it's just very important as you're planning your timeline. Say, for example, you're about to launch a tox study that's going to cost several $1 million, and you didn't plan. You have a lot of questions about the number of animals, the takedown points, the assessments, or whatever the case may be. And your study's about to start in 30 days, and you need a type B meeting. You're not going to get your responses from FDA in a timely manner that's going to inform your study. So this is why it's important to engage your regulatory person and plan these meetings in the context of where your development program is going. Okay, so now you've got your meeting calendared and you've informed your team and you're all ready to go. You have to now give the FDA a background package or an information package. And this package should not exceed about 100 pages is my general rule of thumb. And it contains all of the summary information and data so that FDA can understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your development program, and more importantly, contains all of the information that that the FDA needs in order to answer your questions. Especially when it's a pre-IND meeting where you're informing the FDA about your program for the very first time. You have to include a lot of information. It's almost like an executive summary of the full IND. And it takes a while to write this. So as somebody who's been doing this for a very, very long time, I have told my teams that I will not allow a meeting request to go in until we have a very close to final draft of the meeting background package available. It's been written, it has been reviewed, the questions are clear and concise, the information to support FDA's need, what they need to answer the questions is there in this briefing package. And I have been in a situation where the briefing package takes much longer to write, or sections take longer to write, and you're running up against the deadline for FDA to receive these meeting packages, and they have to be submitted within a certain time of your meeting date in order for you to not get your meeting canceled. And that is what's here. So your meeting package has to go in for a type A meeting because it happens very, very quickly at the time of the meeting request. Type B meetings, remember, it was 60 days from the request. You get the meeting date from the FDA when they respond to you. You calculate back 30 days, and that's when your briefing package needs to be in the hands of the FDA. And so if you don't adhere to these deadlines, FDA will cancel your meeting. It's not happened in the folks that I've worked with or the companies I've worked at, but I've heard that FDA does indeed do that. So FDA receives the package, and there's let's talk, for example, a type B meeting. They receive their package 30 days before. What happens at FDA? Well, each of the reviewers reviews the full package. They come together with their responses to your questions, and they meet as a full review team. They then formulate preliminary responses to the questions that we've asked in the briefing package, and they will provide answers no later than 5 calendar days before the meeting date. Okay. For the meetings that I've listed there, for all other meetings, FDA responds no later than 2 calendar days. What they're hoping here is that you're going to be satisfied with the answers and that you're going to cancel the face-to-face meeting, that the written responses, the preliminary written responses, are sufficient for you to proceed. In general, we typically have the meetings just in case there's some clarification points, but I've been in a situation where FDA agreed with everything we were proposing, and so there was no reason to get on the phone with them. So I released the date from them, and we say that the preliminary written responses from the agency are sufficient. They've answered our questions, and then those preliminary responses become the meeting minutes. If the if the sponsor reads the responses, the preliminary responses from the FDA, and they have some questions or concerns or discussion items, you're not going to go through all the questions if you agree with FDA's responses, but you have to let the FDA know within 3 calendar days of the meeting which items you wish to discuss at the meeting so that you use your time efficiently. These meetings are only 1 hour. So if we submitted 12 questions and I have discussions on questions 3, 7, and 9, I'll tell the agency that we want to discuss 3, 7, and 9. And I usually provide them a little more information about what perhaps the sponsor doesn't understand or what items why we need to discuss more. And then finally, the meeting minutes. If you agree with the preliminary comments, they're final, they are your meeting minutes. If you do engage the FDA beyond that in your meeting, your call, the FDA will prepare final meeting minutes capturing the preliminary comments and the new discussion within 30 days. They're usually sort of short and concise, maybe bullet points, and hopefully you're in agreement with them. The meeting minutes are not required if you agree with the preliminary comments that FDA sent you, or you agreed to receive written responses only. The written responses serve as your meeting minutes. And for interact meetings, since these are the very early phase meetings, preliminary responses are often annotated and resent, based on our discussions within 30 days. And if FDA has any concerns or doesn't understand FDA's responses, you can ask for clarification, but you can't raise a new issue. You can't ask for ask a question, a secondary question to the meeting minutes. That would then fall under a type D meeting, but you have 20 days to ask a question for clarification from the FDA, but you can't bring up new issues or raise any questions. So that's a lot, and that's a lot of planning, and it's a lot that your regulatory professional needs to think about as they move forward for these interactions with FDA. I would like to say that the interactions I've had with the agency, both as a employed by a sponsor, as a consultant, have all been extremely helpful. FDA has been very positive and supportive, and in some cases, not so much. I think they didn't read the package. They missed something, and then when we submitted an IND, we got some questions from FDA that they should have seen in the pre-IND package. But it's not here nor there, but all in all, my interactions have been very positive and productive, and that is the intent of these meetings. We have to consider all those timelines, meeting request, when FDA will give us a date, submitting the briefing package, receiving the final meeting minutes. These all have to be part of your development plan. And I think FDA, the interactions with sponsors are important, and you should take advantage of them because they don't cost you money. You don't have to pay for these meetings, whereas in other countries, there are fees for these meetings. So I encourage people to not be afraid and to take those steps. And when you're ready to have a pre-IND meeting, it's only going to help you. If you need an interact meeting because you have a novel technology.
Quick thought, if we're trying to do MEA recordings tomorrow. Yes.
Did you have a question? All in all, I think that the meetings have been quite helpful, and it helps the FDA, the new sponsors, to understand how the FDA operates. Now, under our current environment, where people are hearing about dismissals at the agency, I understand that the review staff, who most of them are paid by the user fees, not so much government allocated monies. They are still holding to their timelines. They are still trying to meet all of their meeting management goals, and I haven't heard of any problems. If any of you have heard of it, please share it with the group that's on the line, on the call, so that we can know what to expect and what the environment is like. But my last meeting was last year, 2024, and we weren't in our current situation. Everything went fine. So we'll see. That's all I can say, is that we'll see. So where can you look for additional information? the 312 IND section under meetings is an important place to look. It's always nice to read the reauthorization and performance goals for PDUFA, because one thing that you should keep in mind is that there is a state of FDA discussion that occurs among staff, among the whole FDA in January, that talks about whether or not the agency met their performance goals. Did they engage the sponsors within the timeframes of the meetings? Did they meet the meeting management goals? And it's sort of like the health of the agency or the health of the center. And the center director usually obtains this information from all the divisions and lets reviewers know, how did we do? Did we give the regulated industry what we promised them? So they do publish this state of the FDA, state of CBER, state of CDER, so you can always take a look at it. And also the meeting guidance that is listed in the third bullet, that is a fairly new 2023. And always look to see that these guidance documents, which are constantly they're always in draft. New issuance can occur at any time. So that's it. Any questions?
Okay, that was great. I loved getting into like the meat and potatoes of all of that. Okay, so we do have a question, but you did touch on it just now, but in case you have any further insight, I'll go ahead and ask it. With all the recent organizational changes that have occurred this year, can we expect any delays or any other risks? For example, if you want to hold a pre-IND meeting.
I understand that the meetings are occurring as FDA has committed because the reviewers are largely paid for by user fee funds, which are the sponsored, the applicant's fees that are assessed when you submit a new drug application. They're over $4 million for one application with clinical data and over $2 million for no clinical data. So you're exempt if you're apply and you're a small business or you're an orphan product, designated orphan, or I think if you're a skin testing, some sort of skin test product, you're exempt from user fees. But these are substantial fees for a single NDA or BLA that has been submitted to the agency. So it's my understanding that a great percentage, the bulk of the reviewers are paid by user fee funds rather than other federal budget funding. So they are still moving forward. So I would just plan accordingly and use the timelines for the pre-IND meeting as your guide for requesting.
I think that's great news because we're all very nervous about whether or not things are going to continue to happen.
Well, I think people don't understand, when they talk about the cuts at FDA, people are thinking that their review packages are going to be held up. What the news portrays, they don't discuss that sponsors are paying the reviewers.
Right. Yeah, which is something I was not aware of. So that's great information to have. We have a question from Jan. Question on aspect on the product itself during development. Is the FDA looking to revise the pharma industry to more of a quality system similar to the medical device system rather than the current manufacturing system in place?
I don't think so, but maybe my quality folks will, there are quality components, but I think that, you have your manufacturing of your pharmaceutical product. The quality issues are considered and they are reviewed upon inspection, and FDA goes to your site and looks at your SOPs. So your quality program has to be in place, but that is not in lieu of submitting data and test data and release data and descriptions of your manufacturing process and controls. I think it's a combination of both. But I don't think quality will completely replace what's traditionally submitted for manufacturing updates or manufacturing information.
Okay, excellent. Where can we find the state of FDA, CDER, CBER documents, and how often are they published?
They're posted just after the state of the the center is posted, and you can find them on each of the individual center websites. So you'll go to the tab for CEDAR or CBER, and it's under, I think, presentations. It's kind of like a State of the Union.
Okay, so I've reached the end of the questions, unless someone else has any more questions that we can answer while we're here, and we have Elizabeth with us. Feel free to type a question into the chat. You can also unmute yourself and ask your question directly.
Yeah, this is Henry Kaiser. And I don't seem to be entering into the chat, so never mind that. So first of all, simple, how do we get a copy of this whole presentation?
So I'll go ahead and answer that if that's okay. You'll be getting an email from me probably by the end of Friday or early next week, the latest, where I will be attaching the PDF format of Elizabeth's slideshow here. And I'll also be sending you the link to the recording of this.
Perfect. And then I'm an advisor to a South Korean company. And so I've heard some reference to on-site inspections. What happens if this is an international company?
The FDA still goes.
Really?
They have reinstituted their foreign inspections after they were, of course, stopped during the COVID pandemic, but they have been reinstituted. So they will go.
Secondly, the Korean company has some additional testing that's being done in Australia because it's less expensive. Does the FDA consider that type of data coming from another country to be just as viable as doing it in the US?
Sure. I mean, we send out testing to other entities. It's pretty routine. And whether, depending on the importance of that test that's being done, they could even, it's in their purview to go inspect that test site. A lot of times it's just, they'll review the documentation if it's a critical test. But you know, it's listed as a component of your manufacturing, and then you as the sponsor, i.e. the Korean company, is responsible for the people who are doing that testing. So they are responsible for it to for that test to be done properly, to be done according to SOPs, to be sure that their reagents are qualified and you know, brought in, and they have certificates of analysis associated with them. So that's the responsibility of you, or your Korean company. So a lot of times your Korean company will send a quality person to qualify this site, to check up on it, and periodically look into what they're doing in their test results.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Well,
Final-
one more is, I'm sorry, but because of all of this publicity, is Korea, something coming from Korea automatically at a disadvantage?
No,
Okay, all right,
no.
that's good, thanks.
Good news. Okay.
We live in crazy times, don't we?
So do last call for questions. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, if not, wonderful. I want to thank everyone for this outstanding discussion, and a special thanks to Dr. Elizabeth Gordon for your valuable insights and experiences. Also, a big thanks to Rain Catalyst for sponsoring this Lunch and Learn. Like I mentioned earlier, this program has been recorded, and I will send that out a little bit later this week with the slide deck attached to that, as well as a recording. And also make sure that you have the LinkedIn information for Elizabeth so you guys can connect. Also, a survey is going to pop up when I end this program, and I would love for you to answer it again. It just gives me so much insight into what you guys are looking for so I can find the right programs for you. And the third and final installment of the series is happening in July. So keep your eyes open and out for that coming up soon. And we'll also put a link to our events into the chat so you can go see what upcoming events that we have. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. You get 7 minutes back of your lunch. Thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you at a future event.
Thanks, Adrienne.